This is Coder Radio, episode 285 for November 27th, 2017. Hi everyone, and welcome to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hello, Mike.
Pizza here. How's you?
Hello, handsome. You know what I realized is only a few more of these suckers where I'm going to say 2017 on that intro. We're like getting to the end of these.
I know.
Because we do these in week batches, so there's only a few more weeks. I'm not freaking out, though.
I'm not either. I think 2018 is going to be the last year. Period.
I thought you were going to say something really dramatic, like the last year of Coder Radio, and then we'd insert some sort of dun dun dun.
I don't believe you.
That's likely. We might have to change it to the Windows action show, but we'll get there.
Oh yeah, we will get there today. I'm actually pretty surprised at the amount of engagement, as they say, this got on Twitter when our little challenge here was announced. We do have many things that we've been gathered here to talk about today, Mr. Dominic. We gather around the table today to discuss many of things, of which some of those things are developer shortages. Did you know that there is a dramatic developer shortage and there is just not enough talent? Did you know this? Did you know this?
Kind of.
I was trying to get you to bite.
We've talked about this a lot, and this is once again a topic. If you are in San Francisco, I am sure there is a developer shortage. I believe you, Mark. I believe you, Apple. Is you could simply pay more money, make it worthwhile for people to live in the hellhole that is California, or simply, lower your requirements. Meaning, we've talked about this a lot, right? Like the Google hiring test, the Microsoft hiring test are kind of crazy upside theory thing that doesn't end up mattering if you're just doing like front-end web development. A lot of that stuff, I think, can be rolled back. Also, the remote working thing, something I'm pretty much a fan of, but that's because I'm too lazy to go to an office 5 days a week. So I'm more curious as to your take, because I feel like I've talked about this a lot.
I can't really, I wish I could evolve a better take on this than what I have, but what I can't get over is how we are not able to better utilize remote resources. And now I have witnessed a few companies that seem to do it fairly well. Canonical is a company that was born in an era of the internet where their workforce is worldwide and they make it work as a company.
We have a partially remote team now, right? We've got a new hire who's a Coder Radio listener from Texas. We've got people in different parts of Florida, somebody in New Jersey, and I think somebody somewhere else, but everybody's US based, right? That's kind of where we draw the line for kind of like business reasons. It's really not that hard, right? The challenging fact is like, running payroll in multiple states is hard. So you might end up telling people, well, you're going to be a contractor.
Yeah, you pay them in Bitcoin.
Right. You Ethereum because it's going down.
Sure.
And
Litecoin, hello.
But the idea that you can't find people to do the work and that remote employees are worse. Listen, I've had bad on-site employees. I've had bad remote employees. And this is going to sound awful, but bad remote employees are in a way easier to deal with. Because it's just like psychologically easier to fire them.
Yeah,
right?
I guess so. Well, you
don't have to
see if that guy working with you was remote right now. You wouldn't hear him opening up that beer in the background. That's all.
I know the two of them, and they're not even opening beer; they're opening Coca-Cola.
Yeah,
I can't believe I have that crap in this office.
I was being generous. Did you know? I assumed it was cola, but I was being generous.
December 1st, these two jokers are in the other office. We have more space. December 1st.
Son of a bitches, get them out of there. Get them out of here. You know what?
So he's got like Coke in his car. I mean, I'm sorry, Jesus.
What strikes me about it is it seems like if any industry could figure this out, it would be ours. And it would be the betterment for humanity because better products would be created, less environmental impact on people traveling to work, resources could be spread out, people could move out from cities. There's so many benefits to just figuring out a great way to work with remote employees. And maybe take the canonical approach where a few times a year you fly a bunch of them together and they sprint in a room together and they establish relationships and they go back home and those person-to-person contacts remain. Do that. I mean, whatever it takes. But why can't we figure this out, Mike?
Great tools. There are bots that you could use called like Alice that you could like install in your Slack that would totally help your remote team collaborate on documents and email threads, keeping up with your clients and customers and other stakeholders.
Interesting.
Or you could just be a jackass and spend a ton of money in rent and make everybody come to a physical space, thereby limiting the talent pool you have to hire from, and then you get to bitch and moan that there's a shortage.
So here's the other thing that seems like, now, if you're just going from like, now let's switch over to like the business owner. And
let me put on my Republican scarf. Hang on.
Your scarf. Isn't it kind of obvious too, from like a cost standpoint? You can get extremely good talent at a lower rate if you let them work from their home in Colorado versus make them move to California or Florida.
So
or say Texas.
Florida is not a great example because the cost of living is relatively low, especially where I am.
Okay,
but
but you get my point, right? Instead of having to relocate them.
Wait, no. This is a great point. My former home state of New Jersey has like an incredibly high cost of living and the highest taxes in the country right now.
Oh, wonderful.
So think, my salary has become a lot more competitive in, let's say, Florida or Kansas or Georgia, right? I think that's the right thing to do. People can make a good wage for where they live, and your business can be.
And it's not even a compromise for them. Like, legitimately, if say I had no family attachments here in Washington, I could move my RV. I live in an RV. I could drive it to Noah's yard. I could park in Noah's yard, and I could live there for say 6 months out of the year in the summertime, in springtime. And I without making a dollar more, I would still be earning more there because everything is significantly cheaper. My food, my gas, my cost of living is substantially cheaper. Maybe thousands of dollars a month cheaper than living in Washington. That would essentially be a pay raise for me.
Well, look at what I did. I disrupted my entire life to move to Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
and a significant factor was the taxes and the cost of running a business and the cost of living. It's just like significally lower than New Jersey.
Family members of mine have moved from Washington and California to Texas for the same reason.
Right. I'll ask you a question. So, I've been flip-flopping on this, and I've ended up at a middle ground, much like my good man Mitt Romney, who I really wish was president.
Wow, really? Oh, God. God.
I also enjoy firing people. Dirty little hybrid model going where there's this very small core team that comes to the office in Florida. We come a few days a week, and then we're remote.
Yeah, so it's sort of a hybrid approach, which is not super. I mean, we have I would say even at JB, a further hybrid approach. Like, we see each other once or twice a year, and that's about it, really, except for a core set of people.
But we have most people are remote. I come into the office either the 2 days a week I'm supposed to, or, I have an 18-month-old at home, right? So sometimes having a physical space that's not earshot of him screaming because he didn't get a cookie or something is great.
Yeah.
He's 18 months, and he's advanced on those terrible twos. So it's,
Yeah, I had a brilliant plan to podcast out of my garage until I had 3 kids, and their bedroom was above the garage. So I thought that's how I was going to save my money. I wouldn't have an office space. You see, I was going to save the money, and I just
I thought that too, right? Yeah. If you listen back 6 months ago, I was like, I don't need no office space, and I was like, yeah, so I leased an office because I can't take it anymore.
Yeah. So it does, and you know what? I do really, really appreciate the separation of home and work too. Sometimes it's. Go ahead.
Not having 8 or 10 people, whatever it is now here, right? Because I'm in my office right now. If you can hear from the Coca-Cola addicts in the background, I'm looking at you, Luis. it's different, right? Because if you had an office where it was mandatory 5 days a week, I feel like people don't get their best work done 9 to 5. I don't. Right? I really don't. I do my best work at, between like 9 and midnight. Because I'm old now. It used to be like 12 and 4, but I can't do it anymore.
It's 9 p.m.? 9 p.m., really? You're still doing 9 p.m. to midnight, huh?
9 p.m. goes to sleep, right? The kid's asleep at 6. I hang out with my wife, Laura, for maybe an hour or two. And then, she'll go she goes to bed because she's up with him at 5. So, I watch Star Trek Discovery. I do 100 and something jumps in about an hour. It's fun.
Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, and sometimes you tweet about it too. So let's talk about this article before we get into more of the hoopla this week, because you found this. Modern JavaScript explained for dinosaurs. So I love this. I love this graphic. I'm going to leave it up on the screen while we talk about this.
So I just want to jump in here. Have you noticed the theme, Chris, in people sending us things that are like for dinosaurs or by dinosaurs?
Oh, no.
I feel like there's a message. Like there's some subtext here. And we're not that old.
No, but we've seen a few things. Me, but... We've seen a few things. That's what it is. Once you start seeing a few things.
I've been to Reno several times. So, of course, I've seen a few things.
Yeah, so it's the comic stars front-end devs used to just need HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, apparently, they need to learn about Node, NPM, Grunt, Gulp, Webpack, Babel, as I always mispronounce it. Wait up. What the heck do I need for the front end then? Oh, that's just the back end. Get it? That's just the back end. That's good. That's quite good, actually, because it's true. Gosh, that is one thing. And I know it's just not the same, but if you time traveled back and went and told young Chris how things would be built today on the servers that he was setting up back in the day, he wouldn't have believed you. He would have said that's not possible. You can't do that. You can't use JavaScript for that. You can't do that. Are you crazy? That's not possible.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, well, let's take a moment and let's talk about our sponsor this week, DigitalOcean. A lot of these things you're going to run. Like we're going to talk about Alice here for a moment. You know what? You're building infrastructure. You want to do some deployment. You want to prototype things. You want to work with clients. You want to put it in production. DigitalOcean. It can do all of those things. DigitalOcean.com. You go over there, you create your account, and then apply our promo code CODERDIGITAL. One word. Boom. You put that on there, you get a $10 credit, and then you can get a droplet started in less than 55 seconds. Every machine is SSDs. Oh! All SSDs. I love it for like the $5 a month rig all the way up to the ones with hundreds of gigs of RAM. Yeah, I said hundreds, and terabytes of storage and unbelievable amounts of transfer. They have all kinds of different options too. You can have team support. You can have monitoring and alerting to get metrics and alerts if there's an outage on your droplet. They have load balancing as a service, a fully managed service that works right out of the box to distribute incoming traffic to increase your application availability. Private networking that doesn't account against your storage or your transfer, which is great for like proxying or backend databases or backups. Object storage, block storage, both of which have different and very useful applications. Straightforward pricing. My favorite rig is just 3 cents an hour. They'll give you 2 gigs of RAM, 2 CPUs, 40 gigabytes of SSD, and 3 terabytes of transfer. That's just great when I just want to do like some back-end CPU stuff up in the cloud. They got data centers all over the world, and one of the things I love about their website is you can pick which one's best for you because you can go there, and then you can run a speed test to that data center from your location, and they have them everywhere that has really high-end connectivity. They have so many different open source projects they support. It's a really fantastic service with a great dashboard and a simple API that you can integrate into your infrastructure. DigitalOcean.com. Use our promo code CODERDIGITAL. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. Promo code CODERDIGITAL over at DigitalOcean.com. So, speaking of JavaScript, why Alice runs in JavaScript? I see what you did here. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this shenanigans going over at the Mad Botter.
Yeah, so I started writing a bunch of portions / you might say modules of Alice in TypeScript.
Yeah.
For the reason of classical inheritance in...
Say again, I didn't hear that. I didn't catch it. For the reason of, what was it before classical?
Yeah, build against classical inheritance in JavaScript for a while, right?
Okay, yeah.
But the reality of when you have other people working on the project, or you think you're going to, that's very familiar for them, right? And now this is changing, But still, the vast majority of people you're going to hire were taught on Java and C# and things like that. On, Python or Ruby, where they're used to a more dynamic, let's say dynamic structure, right? And maybe Ruby's a bad example, and for a lot of new developers, or even a lot of like intermediate developers, JavaScript's prototypical inheritance pattern is really, really hard. So you end up in a situation where I used to say, well, that's tough cookies. You got to learn it, or just, don't use inheritance, don't use classes. But now ECMAScript 6 came out, and I accidentally discovered something weird. So if you look at the post on DominicM.com, I go through and I list kind of the reasons that I ended up taking all of like the other night, I think it was Saturday night, and refactoring all my TypeScript back into JavaScript.
Oh, really?
So it's pure JavaScript now.
Wow. That must have been a mad session. I get the mad bot. I get it.
See what you did there. Well, actually, it wasn't. And that's kind of the sick part.
Oh, really?
So the reality is the way TypeScript was working is it was transpiling my TypeScript into JavaScript, into ES6. If you look, I have some code samples there. The ES6 is very readable, very usable. There's no reason you couldn't just write that.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm putting it up on
the
screen now.
TypeScript layer there involved having a dist folder. You can name it something else, but in mine it was dist. That would actually be the code running. And there was this problem that if there was a bug in the code that like the JavaScript compiler didn't like, the error in the console would not come to my TypeScript that I wrote, but to the generated JavaScript.
Okay. I'm following you. And this is, this is pretty similar just on the face of it.
Right. This is like from a trivial, like, does the JavaScript look like the TypeScript?
Yeah.
It's very, very similar. Now, in a second, I'm going to point out the differences, but I really want to hit that debugging point because that's the one that pushed me over the edge. You have an error, Chris. It's midnight. You're working on this. I need to do a demo of this next version of Alice on Saturday, this coming Saturday. I'm flying to New York on Thursday. I need to do this demo on Saturday.
Geez, okay.
The exception I'm getting in the console, it has nothing to do with my code. It's the compiled, transpiled version of my code.
Okay, I'm following you. I'm tracking you.
That's not what you want, right? Because think about it. How would you go about fixing that? Well, you'd go look at the exception and you'd go back to your TypeScript code and figure out, okay, what did I do in TypeScript that caused that behavior in JavaScript?
Exactly. Yep. What's wrong with that?
Alice is getting kind of big.
Okay.
That's what's wrong with that.
Yeah, it's getting to be quite the chore.
Getting to be not scalable.
Yeah. Okay. I'll follow.
And on its face, it's kind of a bad idea. That, like, this app is getting more complicated. There's a lot of asynchronous stuff going on. A lot of like network requests that have to happen at certain times. Timing.
Are you saying you're proactively addressing technical debt?
Right.
You are.
I guess I could.
You are.
You could say that.
Yeah,
right.
You didn't even realize it. Look at you. What a good boy. Look at you.
I didn't realize. Taking my own advice.
Yeah.
So then on a whim, I kind of like looked at the dist folder. Like, okay, what does this compiled JavaScript look like? I expected like some gnarly stuff. Then like, well, that's almost exactly how I would have written it if I wrote it by hand. Right, the ES6 class.
That's a big difference. That's a one more clicks and you go, oh, okay.
So that's what I did. I did a git reset hard, and I rewrote everything in ES6.
Boom.
And that's where we are now. Now, you mentioned a good point about the the thing I had to give up, right?
What was it?
Now, I'm an old fogey, so I use the term static typing. I know the more in vogue thing is strong typing, and I know they're not necessarily always 100% the same thing.
Okay.
But for the sake of argument, let's call that type checking.
Okay, disclaimer made. I got you.
Disclaimer made. Because this is an hour podcast, and sometimes you can't go that low into the details.
All right.
And in my blog post, I actually called that out because I wasn't going to like write that as a section because it does undercut my argument a little bit. But
yeah, I see.
You need static typing as much as you think you do. Doesn't have it, and people just write tests to basically replicate what the compiler does if it were statically typed. I have, when writing large-scale JavaScript, generally have nothing to do with static typing.
Okay.
And everything to do with like weird callback hell, right? Like JavaScript tends to work, particularly in the node space, right? Like that's a lot of callbacks.
Yeah, there you go. As you can tell by that rich sound of typing, we did a quick cut here in the show and switched over our VoIP backend, so that way we have a better capture of Mr. Dominic. So are we pretty much wrapped up on the Alice switching to JavaScript? I think that was fascinating, as much as I could follow.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line, right? The benefits of TypeScript did not outweigh the pain in the ass debugging.
Yeah. Yeah, and bottom line is you kicked ass on that switch. I mean, like, damn, that was a productive night. Good job on that. I'm impressed. And then you have one more Medium post that we'll have in the show notes, with a beautiful picture of Krispy Kreme donuts on why you might not need TypeScript or static
typing.
Yeah. So that's nice. Very nice. Nice little just sort of wraps it all up. But it's almost perfect that we had to switch VoIP systems, because what we're about to get to for the show is about the tools that we use for this aspect of our jobs. And Mr. Dominic got himself a new piece of hardware out of left field, too. Didn't see this one coming. Wasn't anything we've discussed on the show. And he took the Windows challenge and was finding to be quite productive. And so I was inspired to follow suit. I loaded up Windows 10 on a Dell 7725. 250? I don't remember the exact precision model number.
Yeah, the model names on Windows PCs is not great.
Yeah, so I loaded it up and gave it a go. Went through quite a few processes to try it out. And I'm here to share my thoughts. And I'm coming away with a different take this time. I hadn't used the Windows 10 Fall Creators Update version or whatever it was, so I have some thoughts on that. Plus, I want to hear about your new hardware. Let's do our last sponsor read for this week, so that way we can just go full bore throughout the rest of the episode. I feel good now. We got good VoIP. We've gone away and done a challenge. Mike's got new hardware, and Linux Academy has a fantastic deal. I'm going to ask for a little favor. You still give us a bit of a mention by going to linuxacademy.com/coders. If you have been on the fence about joining Linux Academy, they have a fantastic deal that's just going for a little bit longer. You have to act as you're listening to this episode. This is a platform to learn everything about Linux and all of the really great platforms around Linux, like AWS, Azure, OpenStack. They have self-paced, in-depth video courses on all those topics. And for this week, for a limited time, they have an unbelievable deal. You can get Linux Academy for 34% off for the year, $12.50 a month. Just do me a favor and go to linuxacademy.com/coders so we get a hit in their log so you know we sent you there. But then if you look around, they'll have a banner if it's still going. And it's such a good deal. Now, if you go to linuxacademy.com/coders, after this deal, you're still going to get the 7-day free trial. You can still look at the platform, see what its features are, but damn if this isn't the deal of the year. linuxacademy.com/coders. Go sign up for the best platform to learn more about Linux, with instructors standing by to help you, a community stacked full of your fellow Jupiter Broadcasting listeners, and much more. linuxacademy.com/coders. And a big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. So, Mr. Dominic, you got yourself an HP Spectre X360. Dun dun dun. Didn't see this one coming. This is their really, really svelte, like fancy high-end MacBook killer laptop, right? With the 4K display and all that goodies.
Yeah, it was an open box deal at Best Buy on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So
Good score,
Tuesday.
Dude. Good
yeah,
score.
so I picked it up. So I want to do a little time travel with this if we can.
Love it.
I'm going to speak as though it weren't 10 o'clock this morning. Hadn't happened yet.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And then at the end, after you go, I'm going to speak in the
Post
present
10 o'clock.
tense.
Okay, I love it.
Right. Windows 10, first of all, so the HP Spectre is a very thin 13-inch laptop that does a flippy backwards thing and has a pen, although the pen didn't come with it. I bought a bamboo pen. And it does all like the Windows convergence stuff. People will know that I love convergence. It's one of the things I've always been hunting for, the laptop tablet hybrid. It's one of my big complaints about Mac, right, that you can't do convergence. I liked Ubuntu when they thought they were going to do that, and then, of course, didn't ship it because that's what they do. So I'm pretty happy with it on that front. The keyboard is far better than the MacBook Pro keyboard. The battery life is phenomenally better than the Galago Pro, not as good as the MacBook.
Did you have a sense of what the battery life was? I'm curious about that.
It's about 6 to 7 hours.
Okay, definitely usable, right?
Definitely acceptable, right? Windows 10 as an environment. So the hardware's great, right? The screen's nice, the trackpad's okay, like everything's fine. And I can't stress how much better the battery life is than the Galago, and the keyboard is than the new MacBook Pro keyboard, which is an abomination. The operating system, Windows, I feel like has actually come a long way. Because I haven't seriously used Windows. Like, I've been using the HP as my daily driver for everything but until, again, 10 a.m. today, which we're not going to talk about yet. It works, right? You hit the Windows key, which I would call the ghetto command key, and, it's fine. The only complaints I have is that I had to delete a bunch of crap off the computer, like a bunch of HP stuff that was running on startup.
They're still doing that?
They're still doing that. So that was annoying. But other than that, like the operating system, I opened VS Code and I got a bash terminal. Or it was actually PowerShell, but it responded well enough to bash commands that I basically didn't notice the difference. VS Code handled the line endings in a non-destructive way. So it didn't reconsider the whole file rewritten to change it to Windows line endings because it was coming down with Unix line endings. Installing Node, installing NPM, I was primarily working on Alice on this, was kind of great. VS Code was just as good as it is on Mac or Linux.
Sure, yeah.
I would argue slightly better. I felt it was faster, but that may be something weird with my setup on Mac because I think my Mac is in a bad state. I really, really like this machine. Until 10 a.m. this morning, I had visions of actually, throwing the gauntlet down and telling you we have to start the Windows action show. And, this is going to be my one machine. I was going to have my Bamboo pen. For presentations, I do tablet. I was going to switch to OneNote. Wow. It was going to be awesome.
Wow. OneNote. Yeah, I've heard good things about OneNote. Never used it much.
The writing out equations and accounting stuff was awesome. I really, really like this machine. I think Windows 10 is the best wannabe Linux distro that I've used in a long time.
Wow. Okay.
Now I want you to go before
sure.
I tell you about 10 a.m.
So I started out with an older original install of Windows 10. It was fully up to date, and my old school thinking about the way Windows updates worked is I just assumed the creators update would come via Windows update. I didn't realize I ended up having to download a separate application and run through an upgrade process, which on my MiFi took about 4 hours and involved 4 reboots. Which was a bit tedious because my default is Ubuntu 16.04, so I had to be there for each one of the reboots, which did remind me about one of the things I kind of found tedious about Windows is that I really have to be structured about when I do my updates because of it. It does seem to require more of my attention than just, say, sitting down at a Linux box and updating all of my packages or running software update on Mac App Store. So I found that to be sort of old school about Windows. But one thing that strikes me when I sit down with the latest version of Windows 10 and after I install Ubuntu from the software center, from their Microsoft Store, whatever they call it, and then I go in and I turn on the Windows subsystem feature. It doesn't get turned on just by installing Ubuntu, which you might think it would. I find that it is remarkable how first class all of the applications feel. Everything on Windows feels like it has a lot of intention to be on that operating system, and a lot of time was spent just roughing off or just smoothing off the rough edges. Slack and Telegram and Steam and obviously Skype.
It's the little things, right? The way I'm sorry to interrupt, but the way the title bars change to mimic your environment colors.
Right.
And I have the photography setting on where it does nice landscapes and everything uniformly changes. There's no ugly duckling. The Windows Mail app, the stupid UWP one, is actually, I would say, far superior to Geary in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is, I think. I agree. I actually found it to be, I was pleasantly surprised. And I after I modified the settings of the start menu quite a bit, I disabled Cortana from the taskbar. I just took that off because I want the real estate. And then I modified. I took off almost all the tiles, and then I just added back tiles. Like I put a Bitcoin ticker in there, and I put a few applications in there, Slack, a few other things in there, which I find actually kind of nice. It's sort of like having widgets that are available instantly when I need them, but I still have a traditional launcher. And after the fall creators update, I am blown away at the speed of the start search. I have never witnessed, like, it's searching applications, the App Store, and the web faster than I can type them and giving me accurate results. It's remarkable how fast that is. I don't know if I like the search results being in there. I may turn that off if I were going to continue to use Windows, but hot damn if that isn't to put all other launchers to shame in terms of just raw frickin' performance. Really remarkable.
It beats the shit out of Spotlight, that's for sure.
Yeah, oh my god. Yeah. And anything from Unity. Like, I've been using the Unity 7 launcher for a while now, and it's just this is just, I mean, obviously,
and the GNOME one.
Yeah. But all that aside, the little things do get to me, like the fiddliness of the power management settings, the fiddliness of how I get the updates, and the mechanisms in which I do it, and the fact that portions of it are really low res. When certain like installers pop up, they just look like real crap on a high DPI display. It's kind of embarrassing. So those things are still there, but it's so much better than Windows. Like you and I are communicating right now on a Windows 7 PC, and this is my definition of what Windows is like. This Windows 7 was sort of peak Windows for me, and I think Windows 10 is better. Windows 10 is better, and so that means my understanding of how good Windows is needs to go up a notch. Because Windows 10 is better, especially once you turn on the Windows subsystem and you install Linux and a pick, and my pick of the week that I'm going to give you guys in a couple of minutes once you install that, if you're a Linux user. And then I installed Chocolate, or whatever it's called. It's essentially like Brew for Windows.
You're right. It's Brew.
But it handles actual Windows applications like MSI files, so I can just Brew install. Well, it's not Brew. I can like Chocolate install.
It's Chalk install.
Chalk install VirtualBox or whatever, and I get the Windows version of VirtualBox, and they're current too. They have the latest version of YouTube DL, which I talked about last week. So I really found it to be pretty adjustable and usable. Like, I could really get it set up. Plus, I had access to a whole bunch of games that I've actually purchased but never quite got working under Linux.
If you open Steam and Windows, like, oh shit, I bought all this stuff.
So there's all of that. Ultimately, for me, the fiddliness of it, and sort of the long history of going hard, going good with the Windows box, and then I hit a wall at some point. It sort of gives me trepidation, because they have a good product now, but it doesn't mean Windows is going to continue to be a good product. There's no guarantee. There's so many things at play. It just gives me. I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with it. Like, I feel like at any moment the rug's going to get pulled out from underneath me.
Okay, so I had that feeling too. And again, this is not 10 a.m. yet. I want to push back on that, though, right? Because my last major Windows experience, other than WinRT, which, I mean, can only be defined as a train wreck, was Windows 7, like you, right? But it was Windows 7 when Windows 7 was current.
Well, the fact that I can still sit here and produce a show using Windows 7 shows you that if you like your Windows, you can keep it for quite a while.
Right. I mean, I'm going to be pretty unpopular in the comments today, but I'm going to say that Windows 10 is actually like a great production-oriented developer machine.
Oh, can I say one more thing? Sorry. I know we keep doing this, but I just want to get this in while we're still being positive. It's a way better windowing environment than X. Like, it draws the windows so much smoother and cleaner and faster. The transitions are cleaner. Everything looks like it's just like in Ubuntu. Like, I could show you right now, actually. If I take this Chrome window and I drag this Chrome window across my screen, it has it's actually right there, just legged out. Actually, it was legging out on me. It's junky, it glitchy. It sometimes draws like a little gray box around it. It's not even staying up with my mouse. It's kind of embarrassingly bad. And this is a high-end Intel system, 6 cores, 32
I have a
gigs of RAM.
$3,000 MacBook on my desk that does the same thing with Chrome.
Look at this. Look at this. This thing can't keep up with my Windows at all. And when it does, it's chunky. It draws badly. And Chrome is a worst-case example. But I could show you other Windows that They'll at least they draw an artificial border. It's getting cut off. X11 is just, it's crap. X11 is too old. It's ancient. And Wayland is not here enough yet. Like, Wayland is too far off in the future, and too many things are going to break. So when I sit down and with Windows, there is one thing I really respect about it, is how good and consistent that window drawing experience is. And when you snap a window over to the edge, I love how it sort of goes tablet mode on you. And it just says, okay, what other application do you want to tile that with?
And it's like, okay, what do you, if you're comparing notes, like an email to a document. So let me just do one more positive thing before I pop the shit in reverse. And this is more of a warning. If I was someone like System 76 or anyone trying to sell Linux laptops, Dell, Pogo Linux, whoever, I would be very scared, because I'm someone who switched to Ubuntu because my target production environment is 90% of the times Ubuntu, and it just makes sense. But the Windows subsystem for Linux completely mitigates that.
Yeah.
Like, I have to be honest with you.
I did an upgrade and everything.
I was thrilled. Like, everything worked. All my scripts work. And it was...
Performance is good.
Perfect.
Yep.
Performance is great. It was with... Like...
It's my first time I'd ever used it. It was my first time ever using it. I installed Fish Shell. I just went to town, man. I could run Visual Studio for any kind of Xamarin work, which we'll talk about in a minute. Or I could install, any of the hundreds of Steam games I bought that I can no longer play. This is the next generation of Microsoft's tools, and you're starting to see them integrated already with Visual Studio Code, where they're going to just start building in Bash support. So you just hit a button in your program of choice that you love using, and boom, an Ubuntu or SUSE or Fedora Bash shell will open up from the subsystem, and when you're done, you just close it, and now Linux is just a feature of Windows.
Yeah, I can't stress enough. So I got the machine, right? And I will admit there was like an hour of just deleting garbage off of it, which is negative, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I just did a Git clone of, I have this like private GitHub that's my like local scripts, it's Bash scripts, right? Stuff I always want. And everything just ran as soon as I installed the subsystem for Windows. And it ran with no modification whatsoever. I would say Windows 10 is the best distro of Linux I've ever used.
Yeah, it is. It is. If I'm a Windows user, it is probably the best Windows OS. Now, to open up our transition here, my core problem with it is, if I'm really honest with myself, if I rely so much on the Ubuntu environment in Windows subsystem for Linux, why not just use Ubuntu, where I have the same applications, and I'm running on an operating system that honestly feels a bit closer to the metal, feels like it's less intertwined with another company's, like when you go turn on developer mode, like it makes you wait while it goes and checks for packages, and then it installs packages in the background just because I checked a box, and it feels like Windows 10 is constantly like I invoke something and it gets modified in some sense, and it dynamically installs something constantly. And while that's, I guess, sort of like installing packages in Linux, it feels like it's intertwined at a level that just makes me uncomfortable. I guess at the end of it, at the end of my test, I felt, okay, this was good and went way better than I expected, but when my computer powers back on, I don't have any compelling reason not to just go into Ubuntu. Unless it was one of those games or something, but it's all the same applications I use, and the games I do want to play are available for Linux. So
do you have a convertible?
No.
Or 2-in-1, whatever they're called.
No, I've never really gotten into that.
I will say one of the stronger points of the Spectre for me is I'm sitting in an airport lounge and I want to edit a document or review a document. That I think Windows 10 loses a lot of its unique advantages because in desktop mode, really, I think it's fair to say it's like a good version of a Linux imitation, right? For my development needs.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, I do agree.
But the ability to flip the hardware around and go into that tablet mode and do like the businessy crap that I have to do is actually, I found that really compelling. I mean, granted, I've been burned before, $40,000 on WinRT, but I don't know.
Like you're going to stick with this? You're sticking with this convertible mode?
Well, I didn't say that yet, so let's.
Because you could try Unity 7 on there, because it's pretty touch. It has a lot of touch support.
So I'm going to let you finish up, and then I'm going to tell you what happened.
Okay. Well, I'll just finish up by saying, on further reflection and listening to you, it's funny. I don't think I wanted to admit it, but I did get the sensation that this is like the best version of desktop Linux I've ever used. Because with Ubuntu there, and the fact that I now have a package manager, and again, my app pick here in a couple of moments, all those things really gave me the sensation. Plus, I have SSH open to a bunch of Linux boxes already, so it really did feel like Microsoft was trying to go for like a Linux dev workstation kind of thing with Windows 10. It can also be like a gaming experience. I mean, it can be other things, but the way I ended up configuring it after I disabled Cortana and a bunch of the start menu crap and tuned down some of the stuff, it felt a lot like Linux to me with a really good compositor. And I had a Ubuntu VM, I had a Ubuntu command line, and I had a Fedora, an OpenSUSE Leap command line, and it was, I don't know, I guess if I'm being totally honest, if I'm looking at this from a Linux advocate position, it kind of scares the hell out of me a little bit. The fact that it didn't give me the sensation of switching, though, sort of gives me some peace with it, because I still walked away with it. Well, that's close. It's pretty good, but it's not actual Linux.
All right. So I want to say that up until 10 a.m. today, it was going to be with or Ubuntu, with or Pop OS. I'm all in on Windows 10. This is the perfect environment. But there is a third party, a third force in the world here, who, like Sauron, gives you a ring of power.
Okay. That
is hard not to put back on. And that is, of course, a Dark Lord in a stark white room, macOS.
Oh, macOS. Okay. All right. Okay. What is it? Is it macOS or is it Xcode specifically?
So that's an interesting question. It's Xcode, right? I got into a weird situation at 10 a.m. where I needed to do something that it was impossible to do on either of the two laptops I had with me at my desk, my Galago Pro or my HP. I had to drive home and go get my MacBook.
Oh boy, that's a moment when that happens.
And the whole world, like this whole 4 or 5, 6 months just came shattering down.
Yeah, and when you're like, you have that moment where like, shit, if I'm on an island and I can only take one computer, it has to be this.
Well, no,
computer.
I'm flying to New York on Thursday, right? So it was like if I was already in New York and this thing came up and I only had these two machines or one of these machines, this would have been a major issue.
Wow.
So I'm back on the Mac. Not by choice. I actually think the Mac is probably the worst of these three options.
You think so?
I think so it's weird. I can't believe I'm ever saying this because I never thought I would. It's not the software. The hardware on the Mac is actually my problem. It's the keyboard. It's the
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. The keyboard's not great. I have one. I have the first generation TouchBook Pro, which I ended up using as my editing station, and I definitely don't like using the keyboard. I like the keyboard on the Dell Precision laptop 10,000 times more.
I like the keyboard on the HP and the Galago Pro more.
Yeah, but outside of that, I still think they make some of the best damn hardware out there. So at least it's got its quirks, it's got its limitations. You got to have dongles. I'd like all those things to change. But if your workflow requires, like in my case, it's Final Cut. My Xcode is Final Cut, and I can't find and don't bother writing me, and I don't want to hear it. I've spent so much time and money trying other editors, and I keep going back to Final Cut. And so it's like me. It's like if I can only take one computer with me on the road, what I've been tempted to do is just not edit video as much anymore. It's sort of been my solution, but it's not a great business move.
Yeah, I have I've tried all kinds of crazy things to remove this dependency on macOS, OS 10, whatever.
Futurecasting a bit, though, don't you feel like they are going in a better direction now? Like, there's obvious blowback to this keyboard, and Apple is not deaf to these things.
Yeah, but that requires spending. I mean, not that I've ever been shy about
the next one
at
WWDC will have a brand new keyboard, I bet, or a totally updated keyboard.
Well, so I mean,
Marco, there you go, a little 2018 prediction, boom.
Right. Marco Arment wrote that post, right? The best Mac ever. And he's been pretty shockingly critical of Apple, frankly, about his distaste with this machine. And
I wound up buying a used 2015 MacBook Pro that has all the ports, still has a high DPI to screen, has the old keyboard.
And I'm at the place where I've already bought the dongles, and like the HP is also USB-C. It's the damn keyboard, right? 'Cause I can't like rip out the keyboard and put another one in. Granted, I use it in docked mode most of the time with the code Blue Cherry.
What the F are you complaining about?
Because when you're on the road for a week and a half or 2 weeks, and it's the only keyboard you have, and the keys start sticking, it's actually a huge pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you there.
Because those are the situations where you're probably under more pressure than you normally are. So everything hurts a little more.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a bad time to be a Mac user right now in 2017. Right. I think in 2018
to be a high-end Mac user.
Yeah, right.
I actually think the trade-offs they've made make a lot of sense for like your sales guys, your non-developers, your
CEOs, here's the thing I think though. At the end of 2018, you're going to have the iMac Pro, which looks like it's going to be a pretty powerful computer. And now there's rumors that they're going to have an embedded A10 processor in there, which I would hope would be for Xcode development. Say goodbye to the simulator if you have an iMac Pro. And then at the end of 2018, they're going to have the Mac Pro, which they say is going to be a modular Mac. I would bet you in that mix too at WWDC is also a new MacBook Pro with an updated keyboard, and then it's the year of the professional Mac or whatever the hell they'll call it. And
I don't know. I mean, the keyboard's there because they refuse to make it not as thin as possible, right? And every year it has to get thinner.
But they've already done one update to it that made it a bit better. The latest generation has had a modification. The thing is to totally redo that, you have to redo the whole top, the whole housing, and so that's going to take. You may have to add a couple millimeters. It's going to take a year. That's going to take at least a year because you're going to have to redesign that. You have to come up with a solution. You have to then come up with a design. Then you have to come up with a way to build it. Then you have to make the machinery to build it. I don't think it's going to take. I don't think they're giving. I think you're crazy. They're not going to give up on the butterfly switches. No, they're just not. No. They'll just they'll give them. I would be willing to bet they could come up with a way to give them a better feel. Because here's what I think they did. Because one thing I'll give the keyboard is it sounds like a keyboard. Like it's clack 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 clack. Like it's a clacky laptop keyboard. It sounds like chiclets. Yeah, but it's got a sound to it. Tack 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 tack. Like they focused on the sound of that keyboard, and they didn't focus on the feel of the keyboard. It's so Johnny Ives. It's so obviously a Johnny Ives thing. They focused on the design and the look and the wiggle of the keys, which they are right. They don't wiggle as much which is nice. They feel more solid. The problem is they don't travel, and your keys end up slamming, and you have to. They get stuck. They get stuck. You have to read. You're typing wrong. You have to type lighter. That's what they'll probably be saying right now. And then at WWDC, Apple will have reinvented the laptop keyboard with a brand new butterfly keyboard switch with better travel, better feel, and a new improved clacky sound. You watch. So let me just take it a notch higher. Maybe if your need is high-end Mac, you ought to be on the iMac or the iMac. Yes. Probably not the iMac Pro, but the iMac 5K if you're a developer. The iMac Pro devs don't really need. Yeah. I actually don't like that they gave that the Pro name. That's actually iMac Pixar Edition. You're kind of missing. Right? No, it's not just so. No, let me rephrase it for you because you're not spending enough money. If you want to be a high-end, this is real. Think about this. If you want to be a high-end iOS developer, then you should be doing your primary development on an iMac Pro. But of course, you need to travel, obviously. So then you need to get the smallest high-end MacBook Pro, so that way you can travel. 13-inch. Of course, you also need a couple of iPhones to test on. So you're going to need an iPhone 10 and an iPhone 8 and likely an iPhone 7. You're also going to need an iPad 9 and an iPad 12 to test on that. And then you're going to need to kind of keep those devices up to date because each new iteration generally introduces new CPU features, new performance, new screen stuff. So just go ahead and get your notches. Get your credit card out and catch up. I actually agree with you. I think about it right now. Like, forget about if I could liquidate all these devices and money was no object, what is the best one machine that I could buy? And it's pretty clearly a 5K iMac. Yeah. If you didn't need to be able to travel places and do presentations. I didn't need to be able to. Well, it would be like a 5K iMac and like a 13-inch MacBook Pro, right? Yeah, that's two like $3,000 computers. So there's $6,000. Yeah,
$6,000.
Yeah,
I still need to be able to like generate code signing, and this is always the crisis that comes up, right? Someone needs a build on some new device, and that can only realistically and conveniently be done on Mac.
Yeah, the Mac is the platform of the mobile app developer, and Windows is trying to position itself as the platform of the web app developer. You see, that's how I see it. Is Windows is like if you're not in that ecosystem, you want to buy the hardware you want and run it on the system you want. Even if you build it yourself, you can do that. And look, we've got Ubuntu, we've got SUSE, soon we're going to have CentOS and Fedora, and you can just build your applications for the web on Windows. And if you're doing iOS development or if you're doing mobile development for multiple platforms, yeah, then you're in a Mac. Then you're a Mac consumer. But everybody else for the web, which is way more developers, why don't you buy a Windows box?
Yeah, no, I think that's true, right? I think the thing that keeps dragging me back to the Mac is there's a legacy of all those years of iOS development, right? It's just, and realistically, I might bitch about how much Macs cost, but you make more money doing iOS dev than you spend by a margin. So,
Yeah, okay.
I hope they've heard the feedback and we can have like another turn more toward like they really need a change like Microsoft seems to have undergone, where they focus on the developers and the pro users and stop, like they have this sickness where they're obsessed with thinness, and I know that sounds flippant, but really that seems to be the root of all their problems.
Well, okay, so now everything we've just outlined, all the devices you need to buy, what if the iMac Pro flips all that shit on its head? It's got an iPhone basically built into it, an A10 processor. It's got its own dedicated memory, its own dedicated GPU, and you light up Xcode, and instead of running a simulator, you're actually running it on an A10, which gives you a pretty good midsection of the iOS market because it's not the Bionic processor in the 10 and what's going to be in the new iPads, but it's also not as low end as a 4 or a 5, and so it's going to have a few years of longevity to it. So that's like an A10 is probably a good 3-year test target. You may be able to buy less devices because you'll be able to simulate the screen and the notch and all of that on the Mac, but the actual code execution will be happening on an ARM chip, which would be a game changer for iOS development and may mean that you don't have to buy an iPad and an iPhone. You buy an iMac Pro, and it successfully emulates those things now on its huge-ass 5K display.
I mean, I'm not even sure that step would be necessary. Because I already carry an iPhone as my personal phone.
Right. Yeah. But don't you think if you could simulate an iPad with hardware A10 processor and
so that's not my main complaint about the Macs, to be honest with you, is that I have to buy the peripheral devices. It's that I don't have enough.
It's expensive.
It's that I don't. Well, it's not that expensive compared to not being able to upgrade the devices.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And
okay.
Like this MacBook Pro on my desk may be the best bad compromise right now, but I can see myself handing this to someone shortly if they come out with one with a better keyboard, because I just travel too much.
Or one that can take more than 16 gigs of RAM, or one that can have more than 2 terabytes. It's not even the RAM.
It really just is the keyboard and like the hardware and the touch bar and all this.
Well, my point is they're limited to a couple of years now. These machines are no longer like the 2015 MacBook Pro that Marco goes on and on about isn't super upgradable itself, but it's still a multi-year machine. And I say that because I have I think it's a 2013 late edition MacBook Pro that I run Arch on, and it's still a really good machine with dedicated 700 series NVIDIA graphics, I think, or something along that lines. SSDs, upgradable memory. I mean, it's still a very good machine all these years later. I don't think my TouchBook is going to get that longevity. It's too static in its configuration.
I mean, I don't think, and this is kind of my problem, this current MacBook Pro on my desk is not going to get that more than a year out of me, because it's going to get too old too fast, and the keyboard is going to bother me too much. I honestly, like, I had a 10 a.m. this morning when I had to go run out and get the MacBook. I was like, well, why the hell don't I just carry the MacBook?
Right.
And it was because I hate typing on that keyboard.
So,
like, I viscerally hate it.
Is it ridiculous then for the Mad Botter Inc. to consider like a business lease program where you get upgrades every 2 years and you just essentially pay into a program? And
yeah, but Johnny Ive is still there.
Yeah,
like you and I don't agree, right? Like I don't agree with you that this trajectory is going to change. I think they'll make minor changes to the butterfly switches that will make it slightly better, but they're not going to go back and do like chiclet switches or they're never going to do cherry switches, which no laptop does. So that's asking too much.
Yeah, well, there are some. They're just huge. I agree.
And it may be like since let me just cut in. Since we've been doing the show, and even before then, for years, I've had this poisonous dream of I will have one laptop that is my entire workstation, and I've spent a freaking fortune trying to make this happen. And you know what I'm realizing, Chris? That is just a stupid thing to
Desktops are so much better. I mean, I love my laptops, but desktops are just such better long-term performance systems. Like the parts are different parts. They're just made of different stuff, and it's...
Right, and they make different compromises.
Exactly. That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it. Would I mind a shitty keyboard on a laptop if I really only had to use it? Every once in a while for travel or on the couch. And the answer is probably it would bother me, but not as much. But like even just like putting a laptop and using it as a second screen to a monitor like I am now, that's actually kind of a kludgy compromise system, right? I have all these cables hanging out. It really is kind of a kind of jerry-rigged sort of setup. I don't know.
Whereas my PC upstairs, my workstation upstairs, I have a built-in graphics that has 3 DisplayPort connections, and I just pop, and it feels like it's built for that purpose. Anyways, I guess I'd wrap this up by saying I find this interesting because it's very similar to my observations, but I'm left wondering now what happens with the HP. Do you keep it? Do you sell it? Like what happens now to the Spectre?
Well, I mean, it's going to become somebody else's machine, right? Like that's what's, yeah. I mean, it's
a nice Windows box. That's a nice Windows machine. It'd probably be a really good Ubuntu box too.
Yeah, Ubuntu's burned me on the touch stuff before.
Yeah, well, try it with Unity, because I know a friend of the show, Martin Wimpress, he uses, he has a slightly, one like generation older and has a tremendous amount of success with Ubuntu on there.
Yeah, and I know just real quick, people in chat are saying, oh, if you just set up a Mac and like do the code signing that way, you from a Windows box or a Linux box, you can do it. Yes, you can. In Visual Studio for Windows, you can do that. That, in practical terms, really doesn't work. Yeah. Especially if you're traveling and there's no one in the office, the Mac is behind a locked door and somehow like restarted and didn't turn back on or something.
Yeah. I wanted to put a call out. I should have made this at the beginning of the show. Maybe I'll try to remember to do it at the beginning of the show next week. Episode 300 is out in the way out there, like just on the edge of our render distance for Coda Radio right now. And we would like to invite, request, ask for a potential like Coda Radio remix art for episode 300, like a special edition, maybe something we could put on some swag, something that signifies Coda Radio 300, something unique for the milestone. And if we got it in time where we could convert it into swag, we put it up with 300. So anyways, I'm just kind of soliciting that, and email Angela at jupiterbroadcasting.com, not me or Michael, because likely we'll get missed, but this is going to be a mission probably for Ange here in the future, and I think she'd be more than happy to receive some submissions. So email Angela at jupiterbroadcasting.com. If you have any, I don't know, if you just want to get involved and help celebrate episode 300, we'd really appreciate the submission. Probably should have mentioned that earlier in the show, but I'm mentioning it now. Well, Mr. Dominic, our experiment with Windows wraps up. I'm back on Ubuntu, and you're on the Mac. I do want to give my pick of the week before we get out of here, because if you're on Windows and you feel like the last I did, at least after I installed the Ubuntu and Windows subsystem for Linux, I really felt like the weakest link was the terminal, the command prompt. Just old. Feels so old. It's so Windows. And so I got Commander at commander.net, cmder.net. It's a portable console emulator for Windows, and the author says it was created out of pure frustration over the absence of nice console emulators on Windows. It's based on amazing software and spiced up with the Munuka color scheme. It's gorgeous. It's sort of a dark color scheme. a custom prompt layout, and looking sexy from the start. And when you compare it to the old the old Windows command prompt, it's pretty good. And the nice thing is you could just like toss it in Dropbox, and it keeps all the configs in the local folder, and then each Windows box you run from, you could just open it up and all of your settings, your terminal layout, and all that stuff stays with you, which sounds pretty cool. There are other terminal apps out there for Windows, like ConMU and others, but this is just really simple, light. It's like a 50 megabyte 7Z download or a 100 megabyte and they got like an 8 meg version, just like a mini version. It's just a nice portable console emulator for Windows. When you combine this with Chocolatey, I'm sorry, whatever the Choc or whatever it was, and the Linux subsystem, it's a pretty nice experience, and it makes Windows feel a lot like Linux. You know, when you get a good terminal on Linux and you get it all configured the way you like, felt like that. cmder.net. If you're on Windows, you want to try it out, and you want to feel like one of the real Unixies out there, check it out. I liked it a lot. We'll have a link in the show notes. Just go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, look for Coder Radio episode 285, and scroll down to the bottom of the show notes for the pick of the week. Mr. Dominic, is there any other business we need to attend to before we get out of here?
No, I'm just going to go cry in a white room.
Gripping your MacBook. I understand. Well, in the meantime, where would you like to send the people? What kind of like destination do you have for them?
Go to themadbotter.com and add to Manuko on Twitter.
Perfect. All right. Well, that wraps us up right here on the Coder Radio program. Thank you for joining us for 285. You can follow me on the Twitter at ChrisLAS. Follow the network at Jupiter Signal. Our live times are on Mondays, at least for now. JupiterBroadcasting.com/calendar for those. And coderradio.reddit.com for engagement, story submissions, and feedback. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Coder Radio program, and we'll see you right back here next week.
Get the hell out of here.